Are you ready to harden off your plants, but you're not sure where to start, or you just want to make your life easier? I have some tricks for you. Let's go. Hey friends, it's Kendall, your joyful farmer. Today I have some hacks for getting your plants ready for transplanting. If you've been starting your seeds and growing them anywhere other than direct sown into the soil outdoors, your plants are going to benefit from an adjustment period to acclimate them to the outdoor conditions before putting their roots into the soil. There are 4 factors that cause stress on your plants during transplanting. In small doses, your plants will respond to stressors and become stronger so that they thrive when planted. First is the sun. The sun's UV rays are far more powerful than any indoor growing lights. Next is wind. Wind resistance is a stressor, and if you can expose your plants to wind before planting, it'll make their root systems and stems stronger. Temperature. Plants grown indoors in climate-controlled rooms are used to more consistent temperatures. There's almost always going to be an adjustment for plants to deal with either warmer or cooler temperatures than they've been accustomed to indoors. It may stress plants or it may not, depending on the plant's heat or cold tolerance. Soil. If you're growing plant starts in a potting medium, your native soil is likely to be a lot different than that potting mix, unless you're planting in containers. It can take plants weeks to adjust to new soil conditions, especially when new soil is poor, compacted, or lifeless, like a heavy clay like we have here in North Texas. So dealing with your outdoor soil is a part of helping your plants during the transition process as well. With all of these different factors that can be stresses, baby plants benefit from an adjustment period to be able to adapt to new conditions without being overstressed and stunting growth or even shocking the plant to the point of losing it. About a week is generally enough time for a plant to recover from a new stressor, such as sunlight or root disturbance of being transplanted. And I do have some helpful tricks to make this process easier, which I'll share in just a bit. To help understand this concept a bit more, I put plants into categories of needing the least attention hardening off and the most attention and care when hardening off. Needing the least attention are plants that have been direct sown into the garden or volunteers in the native soil outdoors. They pop up and they're instantly adapted to all of the outdoor conditions. Next would be winter sown plants. Seeds started in vented greenhouse style containers are already adapted to temperature swings and sun, but they'll benefit from a week of adjustment to wind before the stress of transplanting. In this case, I place the container where it's going to be transplanted and I take the lid off for about a week before planting into the permanent soil home. Next would be a greenhouse. Similarly to winter sown plants, greenhouse grown plants are already adapted to sun, and if you have a breeze blowing through, they're more resilient to wind stress as well. A week of being outside in full sun and breezes is typically enough to harden them off before transplanting. I just like to watch the temperatures so that I'm not hardening off frost tender annuals when low temperatures at night are getting lower than 40 to 45 degrees Fahrenheit or 4 to 6 degrees Celsius so that they're not too stressed. The next group, which needs similar attention for hardening off, is plants grown outdoors on a shady porch. There are some plants that I like to start this way because I can keep an eye on them and give them water as needed, and I can have them in full sun, or part shade depending on what I'm growing. They are adapted to wind and the outdoor temperatures, but they'll need some time to adjust to the sunlight. A week in full sun or whatever sun conditions are expected for where you're going to plant them is generally enough. If they've been growing in full shade on the porch, I'll put them in a part sun location for 3 to 4 days, then full sun for 3 to 4 days before planting out. And the last group, and the group that needs the most careful attention during the hardening off process, is plants grown indoors under grow lights or in a sunny windowsill. They need to adjust to adapt to all new conditions: sun, temperature swings, new soil, and also wind, unless you've had a fan on them occasionally as they've been growing indoors. That is a lot of change, and they will need some extra care to make sure that they're not sunburned, frostbitten, or just shocked to the point of giving up. What you'll hear most often is to gradually increase the number of hours that they're out in the sun each day over the course of about a week. 1 hour of sun, 2 hours of sun, 3 hours of sun, and so on. But I actually don't have time for that. When you have a full-time job, you can't come home and move plants in and out. So I have a few different methods that I use for this process, and they make my life much easier when it comes to hardening off. These are some hacks that I've learned over the years to help me be more successful and kill fewer plants. Not 0 plants, but much fewer plants. The first is the use of a covered porch or a shade that allows you to move the plants according to how much sun they'll get. This takes a little bit of observation and a little bit of problem solving, but you need to find or create a spot where you can control how much sun your plants are going to get in a day. This is like solar mapping, but for your baby plants on the porch. If they've been indoors or in full shade, you want them in a location where they're going to get morning sun at first. We have some on the southwest end of a porch, and they get sun in the morning, and as the sun goes up, they're in the shade the rest of the day. If you don't have a porch, you could even set up a table or a secured umbrella so that the first few days of hardening off, they're not getting the sun except for 2 to 3 hours in the morning. Also, evening sun works as well. It's the direct overhead sun that's going to be the harshest on your plants when you're first hardening them off. Also, if it is going to be windy, consider whether they have enough wind blocked for your containers not to be tossed around. You'll have to map out the sun and make adjustments to where you can place your plants to give them a couple of hours of sun the first few days, 4 to 5 hours the next few days, and at least a few days of full sun before planting out. Something we use to make this easier on our covered porch is a shelf on casters. We've found that the different heights of shelves can get different amounts of sunlight during the day, so the top shelves tend to get less and the bottom shelves get the most. We love that it is on casters though. It holds about 10-20 size trays, and it can be rotated and moved around very easily. However, the method that is probably my favorite is not moving plants at all. It can actually be a pain to move them around. If plants are coming out from indoors and needing careful attention hardening off, one way I will do this is I'll use a lightweight row cover over plants for about 5 days to a week straight. Then I'll take the row cover off for the first half of the day for 2 to 3 days in a row. Usually I'll do this on a weekend when I'm home so that in the middle of the day I can put the cover back on them. And then I'll give them 2 to 3 days of full sun before I plant them out. This makes it much easier to cover and uncover plants rather than moving them to a new location once or more times per day. Really quickly, if you're finding this content valuable, I would love it if you would consider liking, subscribing, or sharing it so that we can continue to share the joy of growing with others. Another way I will harden off plants is actually not hardening them off. If plants have been growing in the shade or part sun on my porch, I will sometimes plant them out and immediately cover them with hoops and lightweight row cover or shade cloth. I'll leave them covered for about a week, making sure that they do have a little bit of air blowing through them for some air circulation on warmer days. Then I'll cover them in a half moon style for 3 or more days. This is where I'll clip the row cover halfway onto the hoops so that the plants are getting morning sun and shade in the afternoon. Again, I'll do this for about 3 or 4 days, then I'll remove the row cover altogether and they're all set. If you wanted to do this with indoor started plants, I would recommend putting the plants in the shade on a covered porch for about a week first, just so you're not overloading them with the stress of temperature swings, wind, sun, and new soil all at the same time. One last little trick is to keep an eye out for rainy or overcast days. Not thunderstorm days, but just rainy or overcast. When you're first acclimating indoor grown plants to the outdoors, overcast days can be a really great time to gently introduce the plants to the outdoors without having them overwhelmed by all the UV rays. And as a bonus tip, while you're at it, I highly recommend direct sowing a few seeds as you're planting out your transplants, because those direct sown plants won't need any transplanting or extra babying to get to maturity and be thriving, and you might be surprised at how they can catch up. It can be great to have both transplants and direct sown plants as an insurance policy or as a next succession of whatever you're growing. So I hope these tips are helpful. Are you starting seeds indoors or outdoors this year? What are you looking forward to? I wish you joy this gardening season, and I'll see you next time.